So today we're going to be checking out the Clavia Nord Lead 4. It's a really cool synthesizer, and I still think it's a powerhouse of a synth, but there's a lot of hate out there for this keyboard compared to all the previous versions of Nord Leads. We're going to talk about those differences. We're going to talk about the pros of this keyboard and some of the deficiencies. We're going to check it out in action and play some really great sounds from it as well, so stay tuned and check it out. Hello, I'm Roland. This is Alamo Music Center, downtown San Antonio, Texas. Be sure to check us out online at alamomusic.com and hop on the YouTube channel and subscribe to the Alamo Music Sound Lab. We've got a lot of great videos and a lot more to come. Great synthesizers, samplers, effects, and more. Stay tuned, subscribe, and check it out. The Nord Lead 4. Why does it get some hate out there? I could tell you a couple things. Compared to the Nord Lead, the original, and the Nord Lead 2 and the 2X, it does sound a little colder than the other previous versions of Leads. But at face value, that might be a little bit of a hindrance in getting into it and diving into it and coaxing some things out of it. But I think if you really spent some time with this keyboard, you'd really find that it's the most evolved and really the most powerful Nord Lead of the whole series. Sonically, again, it sounds a little colder than your typical Nord Lead, but I think you could still get some pretty massive sound out of it. And if you're running it into like external equipment, preamps, equalizers, compressors, all of those things that you would miss from the original Nord Lead and the Nord Lead 2 and 2X would be gone by the wayside, because you can definitely get back some of that tone that's missing in this keyboard with external equipment. So as the lineage goes, the original Nord Lead came out back in the 90s, and that was a really great sounding synthesizer. It could kind of carve out tones from a Roland Juno. It could sound a little bit like an Oberheim OB8. It could sound like a Prophet 5. It could sound like a Moog, a TB303. Really, the Nord Lead was a keyboardist's dream keyboard back then, because, again, back in the mid-90s, there wasn't a whole lot of manufacturers making keyboards that were trying to recreate sounds from way back in the day, the 70s and the 80s and so on, right? That era of synthesizer and keyboard building was meant more for romplers, stuff that had pianos and strings, Korg M1s, Korg Trinities, Korg Tritons, and so on and so on. So for a company to come out with a keyboard that was totally unlike an M1 or a Triton or a Trinity was pretty outstanding in that day. And I don't think they really anticipated it would be so strong of a keyboard. I really don't think they envisioned that it was going to be so popular and it would take off and have an existence for decades on. But man, they really did it. I was totally hooked on the Nord Lead the first time I played one back in 1995, 96, I think. And that was, again, the original Nord Lead. The original Nord Lead had a bolder, rounder tone. It sounded a little bit more analog. The Nord Lead 2 came out after that, and that keyboard was a little bit more polite. It was a little smoother sounding, a little bit more harmonically rich in the upper mid-range section. Didn't quite have the bold, round bottom end that the original Nord Lead had, but still a very cool keyboard. And for me, the synthesizer strings were really, really fantastic on the Nord Lead 2. Then came the Nord 2X. The Nord Lead 2X was 96K internal engine, so they really designed the entire engine in that particular keyboard. And so as we went from the rounder, bigger, bolder, analog-y type of tone from the original to the 2X was a lot more gentle. It was a little bit more polite, even there so. And it was really kind of like the best of all the metallic things that you can get out of a synthesizer. A bit brighter, a bit brassier, and still a very cool keyboard. They add a lot more features to that keyboard as well, as far as editing on the top panel, which is great. And then after the 2X came the 4. Well, there was the 3, but we're not going to count the 3 because the 3 for me is more of an FM synthesizer than it is a typical Nord Lead. I really think the Nord Lead 3 was kind of a fluke in the Lead series. Not to say it's a bad keyboard, but it wasn't quite like what they were originally designed to be. So we're going to skip the 3 and we're going to go on to the 4. The 4 is the coldest sounding synthesizer of the Lead series. And while you might think that's a hindrance, it's actually kind of a positive thing. The fact that you get so much more on the top panel and under the hood can really develop and create some massively cool textures. Atmospheric droney type stuff, soundtracky type of things. But it could still do the bass lines and the lead lines and still sound like a Prophet-ish kind of thing or a Juno kind of thing. But again, it's just not nearly as bold sounding as the previous versions. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the feature set just to give you an idea of what it offered in compared to the previous versions. The filter section is outstanding. It's got the ladder M, which is the Mogish type filter. It's got the ladder 303, which is a TB303 type filter. It's got your typical 12 dB low pass filter. It's got the 24 dB, and it adds a 48 dB low pass filter. So as far as filters are concerned, you can get a lot of different tone and a lot of different drive out of the filter here to really sound like just about any keyboard out there, filter-wise. You do have a very basic effects section with delays and reverbs. And, you know, while they're good, they're not phenomenal. I mean, I've never really been a fan of onboard effects on synthesizers, simply because, you know, if you have an Eventide or a Strymon or even a classic Boss delay pedal, they're just going to sound a little bit better than the onboard effects on here. I always think that manufacturers, when they develop the effects section, they don't put enough care and attention onto the effects and the quality and the caliber of the effects compared to the rest of the stuff. And this is no exception. Definitely doable, definitely still usable, definitely cool on stage because it's on board. In the studio though, you might want to try rack mount stuff or pedals. Definitely get you a little bit more in that territory. You've got your typical envelope section, and you've got the two oscillators, which is kind of cool because each one of these oscillators offers two different types of pulse. One is modulatable, one is not, one's fixed. You've got your triangle wave, your sawtooth wave. Both oscillators have noise generators. And the first oscillator has 128 wavetables. And some of those are cool. You know, some of those are very kind of metallic-y, can get into the PPG territory, the Waldorf territory. Some are meat and potatoes like strings and pianos, which I would never really use on this keyboard, but you might find some use out of them. Out of 128 wavetables, I'm sure you'd find something sweet to utilize. Of course, those wavetables are on top of your sine, or your triangle, your sawtooth, your pulse waves that are already on the section over here. So a lot more versatility on oscillator 1 than on oscillator 2, but in combination, really, really sweet. LFO section is insane. You can clock it to USB, to MIDI, and you can modulate so many things with these LFOs across the entire parameters on the top panel. Very, very cool. You've got unison 1, 2, 3 mode. You do have, which this is actually very cool. One of my favorite things about this keyboard is the impulse morph section right down here. So if you have a patch and you're playing it and you just want to go totally nuts and just go crazy and just kind of develop a whole new sound right off the cuff, clicking one of these morph buttons will take what's going on and morph it into whatever it thinks it wants to do. Fantastic. Half of the time the results are The other half of the time the results are just amazing. So it's kind of like pulling, you know, a ticket out of a hat here. You never really know what you're going to get with the morph section, which is why it's so fun. Very cool keyboard. All in all, it's 49 keys, extremely lightweight, so taking it on gigs is super cool, won't break your back, and I mean, the footprint is just fantastic. Being that it has USB and MIDI on the back, you can hook it up to your DAW and use the keys as a controller. I think the keys feel fantastic. And of course, it's got that Nord look. The red keyboard thing on stage is always cool. So I'd like to see them do a blue one. Maybe Nord Lead 5 in blue. How about that, guys? Anyways, all in all, very cool keyboard. I think you're going to really enjoy some of the sounds I'm going to play for you in just a little bit. So yeah, let's check it out. Wow. So, I hope you enjoyed checking out this Clavier Nord Lead 4. As you can see, it's a very cool and very strong synthesizer and definitely worthy of the Clavier Nord thing. Check us out next time. We got a lot more videos coming up. Once again, subscribe on our YouTube channel, Alamo Music Sound Lab, and check us out online at alamomusic.com. We've got a lot of cool things coming up in the future, so stay tuned and we'll see you soon. Thank you.